One Question is brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996. Michael Smith with Sports Business Daily and Sports Business Journal has joined me today on One Question. And Michael, I'm exiting Orlando. As you would imagine, one of the biggest topics of conversation around the World Marriott this week was Learfield's acquisition of Spectra's ticketing piece, which we're going back to the Paciolan brand now, which, as Greg Brown said in your piece, frankly, everybody still called them Paciolan anyways, so this makes sense. I'd love your perspective. This is likely, I think, highly likely the biggest deal that Learfield's done over the last 3.5 years, when they've acquired 12 other players to build out a portfolio of revenue verticals in this space. What do you think this does for other ticket players in the marketplace? How do they respond? Do they change their positioning at all? Or is it business as usual?
Well, I think it does a couple of things. One, it restores the Paciolan name, and that's a name that the company had a lot of equity built into because it had been around since 1980. And so as the Paciolan software business moved deeper and deeper into college sports, Paciolan was the name associated with the industry leader. So that's a good association to have. And then also from the Learfield perspective, it's an acquisition that immediately puts Learfield in a leadership position for this particular type of business. You're talking about ticketing software, you're talking about online marketing, you're talking about retargeting fans. You're talking about data analytics. Paciolan under Spectra had really broadened its array of services, and so immediately Learfield moves into a leadership position with this acquisition. So I think those are two pretty clear reasons why this is a valuable acquisition, and like you said, probably value-wise, probably the biggest one that they've had, and from the standpoint of what it does for the company, certainly one of the most important acquisitions that Learfield has made.
Okay, so how do you see what Ticketmaster may respond and do? Does it impact them at all going forward?
I don't know that it impacts them. I think the way that it impacts Paciolan the most is that Learfield has multimedia rights deals with somewhere in the neighborhood of 125 schools. Of those 125, 45 currently work with Paciolan. That's potentially 80 other schools where Paciolan could find new business and grow the core of what it does in terms of the ticketing software. And then also, Learfield has done a great job with its other acquisitions of introducing these businesses like an SME branding or GoVision or its licensing business to its multimedia rights clients. Learfield obviously in that way has a foot in the door already, and it can kind of clear the path for an introduction to some of these other businesses that it's looking to grow in college sports. And so, as big as Paciolan has gotten over the years, there still is plenty of room for growth. I'm not sure. I'd have to think about it a little bit more. I'm not really sure how that would affect what Ticketmaster is doing. It has such a big, broad business, whereas when you say Paciolan, you think of it as a college business. Ticketmaster is in so many areas. College is certainly one of them, but I'm not sure that it would have the impact on Ticketmaster like this kind of a move has on Paciolan.
You guys wrote the piece a couple of weeks back on the oral history of how IMG College came to be, which any oral history type piece I think is pretty fascinating. And I think I heard one time Jim Miller, somebody made a comment of, that must be a really style in which to write or an easier style to put together. And Jim Miller said, yeah, well, go try it. If you think that, go try it. But now I think it'd be fascinating to look, and maybe this won't happen for another 10 years, of a couple of years back in the path that IMG College went down and the path now that Learfield's going down, and where they're similar, but also where they're diverging quite a bit as well.
It's interesting. I think back over the last several years as IMG and Learfield, battled head to head, and both companies have gone through so much change, ownership change, and it's been fascinating to watch. The IMG story, it just felt like the right thing to do. I've never written a story in the form of an oral history before. It just felt like the right way to present it with all the different voices that we had in it. Learfield has, I think, the Learfield story for a company that's 40 years old maybe qualifies as a little bit more of an overnight success in terms of the incredible growth that they've seen in just like a 3 to a 3.5 year span, with the 12 or 13 acquisitions that they've made, and to grow the value of the company from $100 million to $1.3 billion, which is the most recent sales price, is just phenomenal. And it's one of those things where we've covered it so intently on a week-to-week basis, month-to-month basis, quarter-to-quarter basis, that at some point there will be a time where we need to kind of take a step back and look at the big picture of where Learfield was, where they are now, and maybe go back and retell the story of that growth.
Yeah, you're right. And I think there's probably a much larger, heck, maybe it's a book to be written one day about the Learfield story, which has some interesting roots and where it's come since, the 70s, is pretty interesting.
And I think what's interesting, Matt, is the way that these companies, IMG has talked about this, and Learfield really has talked about it and is maybe doing it a little more. They want to be that one-stop shop. The end goal for all of this is for these companies to be a one-stop shop for all of these different disciplines for their college clients. So if your school needs multimedia rights, if your school needs licensing, if it needs branding, if it needs video boards, through ANC, whatever your school needs, Learfield wants that school to be able to make one phone call to Learfield and get it all done. IMG has articulated a similar vision in the past, and so it's almost been kind of a race to see who can get there first.
And that's today's One Question, brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996. One Question is designed to give D1 Ticker subscribers valuable insights on how executive leaders in college athletics think about key issues on their respective campuses, in their departments, or within their leagues and conferences. One Question is brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996.